the golden years. That's how some folks describe the latter years of our life. The golden years. Who came up with that? I don't know who that originated with, but I'm guessing it was a young person. No one who has grown old would describe this chapter of our life with the word golden. It's all golden. We would probably describe this period of our life as the not so golden years. I want to take a few minutes to talk with you this morning. I want to tell you the truth about aging. I want to talk to you about the not so golden years. Now, somebody watching online, you just went for the remote. Hang on. You started to shut the computer down. Give me just a minute. And some of you began to mentally disengage. Well, while he's talking, I'm going to put together a grocery list, my to-do list for the week. No, hang on. I'm going to share with you 3 facts about growing old. And the first 2 facts are for those of you who are young. First 2 are for those of you who are young. Fact number 3 is for those of you who are not young. So, Ronnie, how do I know which category I fall into? I'm going to give you 10 signs that you're growing old. You ready? Sign number 1, you have received correspondence from AARP. And some of you immediately went, what is that? You're young. You are young. You don't even have to listen to the rest of the test. And some of you know it means the American Association of Retired Persons. And you got some correspondence from them, and I know what you thought. That mail lady is forever putting my neighbor's mail in my box. And then you saw that it was properly addressed to you. They're telling you something. You've grown old. Sign number 2, your physician recently explained your current ailments and prefaced his or her explanation with this phrase, well, at your age. That's a sign you're growing old. Sign number 3, you recently heard yourself use this phrase in a conversation. Back in my day. You know what could be worse? You heard yourself intentionally use the word whippersnapper. Now, if you use whippersnapper, you're not growing old, baby. You old. You're old as dirt. You may have gone to school with Methuselah for all I know. Sign number 4. Hang on just a minute. Your spouse bought you a blood pressure monitor for Christmas. You're unwrapping, you go, honey, what is this? That's the new BP 1000. Gives you a blood pressure reading, oxygen level, pulse level, body temperature, and even the day's weather forecast. Now, if that happened, you're old. If you were glad to get it, you're really old. Sign number 5, you recently turned down a 6 o'clock dinner invitation explaining to your spouse, I just can't eat that close to bedtime. Sign number 6, you've lost the ability to watch a movie from start to finish in one sitting. I tell you, something happened to me this week. Hadn't happened to me in years. I watched the movie all the way through without nodding off, but I got to be honest with you, it was so scary, I was afraid to go to sleep. Sign number 7, you're older than the old people you watched on TV when you were growing up. Man, I loved the Beverly Hillbillies, and I always looked at Uncle Jed, and I'd say, man, that guy is old, man. And he's old. So one day I'm watching reruns, and I thought, I wonder how old he was when they made this television show. So I Googled it. He was 54 years old when it started, and 63 when they discontinued it. And I thought to myself, my God, I'm older than Jed Clampett. And I'm like, Lynn, I'm going to go out in the backyard, lie down in a deep hole. If you would, come out and throw some dirt over me every once in a while. Sign number 8, you recently had an enjoyable, even energetic conversation with a total stranger about the results of your colonoscopy. Tell you what, my colon is just as smooth as polished glass, man. Sign number 9, men, you don't know when it happened, you don't know how it happened, but you know it happened. Your bladder shrank down to the size of a thimble. Sign number 10, you have heard yourself utter the telltale groan. You start out of the chair and you roll over on the bed, raise up. That means you're old. Now listen, if you groan not only upon rising, but when you're sitting, you're really old. Now if you discover this morning you're growing old, don't get mad at me. I'm not making fun of you. I'm one of you. I'm not as old as Grayson Williams thinks I am. I did a podcast with Grayson and Jake Black, and Grayson introduced me. He said, we got Ronnie Hodge here today. He has like 1 billion years of pastoral experience. 1 billion? I mean, 1 million would have been bad enough. Grayson thinks that when I started the ministry, we chiseled out sermon stones in stone. You know it? Yeah, I think he thinks we wore animal hides and went to church, and instead of saying amen, we just went, ugh, ugh. In 4 days, I'll celebrate my 66th birthday. When it comes to aging, I'm learning to do this. Sometimes the best thing you can do is laugh to keep from crying. Now, if you're young, I want you to listen to me. Here's fact number 1 about growing old. You ready? You young whippersnappers, you listening to me? Fact number 1, growing old requires resilience. I've done some things in my life that are hard. Building and maintaining a healthy and happy marriage can be hard at times, can't it? But Lynn and I have done that. Matter of fact, last week we celebrated our 47th wedding anniversary. Give that a round of applause to Lynn. She deserves it. She deserves it. I'm happily married. She's enduring it, so. Parenting can be hard, can't it? When I was a young man, I would say parenting's the hardest thing I've ever done. But Lynn and I have raised 2 wonderful children. In my personal opinion, pastoring is the hardest job in the world. And I've been doing it for 36 years. As a matter of fact, I'm the first pastor in Oconee County that endeavored to transition a church from the old traditional model into the more contemporary model that you're a part of. I was the first. Listen, I pioneered that, baby. You want to talk about hard? That was hard. However, all those things pale in comparison to growing old. Growing old is without a doubt the hardest thing I've ever done. Some of you who are young would say, what's so hard about it? Change. Constant change. Constant, difficult change. In the Old Testament book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 12, Solomon describes the wisest man ever lived describes the kind of change that accompanies aging. I want us to take our time this way. The last few times I've preached, I haven't made it to the 20-minute mark. What I was doing is put some change in my pocket because today I'm going to take all the time I need. Are you good with that? Yes. I knew you would be. So as you hear these not so golden folks, they're like, yeah, tell it, preacher. Get the truth out there. I want to read. Solomon describes the kind of change that accompanies aging. We're going to read verse 1 through 6. Solomon says, don't let the excitement of youth. I want you to see who's talking to. He's talking to young people. Don't let the excitement of youth cause you to forget your Creator. Honor Him in your youth before you grow old and say, look what He says old people say. Life is not pleasant anymore. He uses some really strange analogies to describe aging, so I just want to kind of pay attention. He said, remember Him before the light of the sun, moon, and stars is dim to your old eyes, and rain clouds continually darken your sky. Remember Him before your legs, look how He describes them, the guards of your house start to tremble. And before your shoulders, the strong men stoop. Remember him before your teeth, your few remaining servants, stop grinding. And before your eyes, look how he describes them. The women looking through the windows see dimly. Remember him before the door to life's opportunities is closed and the sound of work fades. Now you rise at the first chirping of the birds, but then all their sounds will grow faint. Remember him before you become fearful of falling and worry about danger in the streets. Before your hair turns white like an almond tree in bloom and you drag along. Now, hey, young people, this is what you got to look forward to. You see this? You drag along with that energy like a dying grasshopper. Thank you, Solomon. And then, hey, it could get worse. Read this. And the caperberry no longer inspires sexual desire. Enough about that. I'm the preacher who preached on sex back in the summer. I can't say any more about that. Remember him before you near the grave, your everlasting home, when the mourners will weep at your funeral. Yes, remember your Creator now while you're young. And then he uses 4 crazy phrases to describe aging. I want you to listen. Yes, remember your Creator now while you're young before the silver cord of life snaps. How's that? That's one. And the golden bowl is broken. Don't wait until the water jar is smashed at the spring. And the pulley is broken at the well. I'm going to use that in my next funeral message. You know what? Poor old Pete lies here and the pulley broke at the well. You know? I was hoping you'd enjoy this. In these verses, Solomon uses vivid, humorous imagery to explain why old age can be unpleasant. According to Solomon, the problems change, constant change, difficult change. And first of all, there's physical change. Sounds grow faint because of hearing loss. Eyesight dims. We lose strength, muscle mass, balance, and energy. Our body and our appearance change. I remember the first time I looked into the bathroom mirror and it was my dad looking back at me. You know, like, Dad, you know. Along with these physical changes, there'll be emotional or mental changes. It can be harder to find joy in old age. That's what Solomon is describing when he mentioned rain clouds continually darken the sky of the elderly. Another way he would have worded it is this: the older you get, the more often storms blow in and the longer they linger. Opportunities narrow for the elderly. There are things they used to do for pleasure they can't do anymore because their bodies won't let them. Solomon said the sound of work fades. Those who have grown old may question their worth because they're no longer a part of the workforce. Recognizing their increasing frailty, the elderly feel anxiety when attempting normal daily functions like, cleaning out the gutters. Those of us with white hair can be target for criminals. That's why I always have 4 friends close by: Sig, Sauer, Smith, and Wesson. Some of you get that. There's the emotional drain of knowing that most of your life is behind you. Most of your story's been written. You're closer to death than you've ever been. Now, for those of you who are young, I got a question for you. Does that sound golden to you, huh? Growing old is not for wimps. It is not for the faint of heart. Growing old requires resilience, the ability to manage unwanted and undesirable change, the ability to bounce back from a hard lick, the ability to adapt to less than ideal circumstances. You know what I know about old people? They're tough, because you got to be tough to grow old. So, those of you young, growing old requires resilience. And therefore, here's my advice to you. Prepare. You with me? Prepare. Don't let this catch you off guard. Prepare for old age. You ask, Ronnie, how do we do that? I think there's a multitude of answers to that question, but this morning I'm going to keep it simple, just like Solomon. Remember your Creator. Did you catch that? In 6 verses, Solomon said to young people 8 times, old age is coming, get ready for it, and here's how you do it. Remember your Creator. When we're young, it's so easy to forget about God, to neglect Him, to attempt life without Him. When we're young, it's so easy to embrace a self-sufficient mentality and lifestyle. When we're young, we can allow the busyness of life to crowd out God. And I'm going to tell you what, the absolute last thing you want to do, guys, is face old age without God. Do you know where the aged get their resilience? They get it from God. He makes them resilient through His strength and grace. If all goes well for you, you're going to grow old. I remember one day Brock Williams was looking at a picture that Bill Childs had made of me sitting in a field beneath the Canadian Rockies. And I was sitting there reading the Bible. And Brock pointed at me and he said, "Who is that?" I said, "That's me." He had this puzzled look on his face and he said, "You were young?" I said, "No, Brock, I was born this way, man." You know, when I was born, my mama said, "Was it a girl?" The doctor said, "No." "Was it a boy?" "Not really. It's an old man." You know, I think that's what Brock was thinking. If all goes well, you're going to grow old. And trust me, a vibrant, real relationship with your Creator is essential to experiencing peace, contentment, and joy in the not-so-golden years. God doesn't change. So connect with Him now. Start building a relationship with Him now. Learn to lean on Him now. Fact number 2, for those of you who are young, growing old produces wisdom. Look at this Bible verse, Job chapter 12, verse 12. Wisdom belongs to the aged, and understanding to the old. The Bible distinguishes between knowledge, understanding, and wisdom. How are they different? Here's the way to explain it. Knowledge equals what? Here's what I know. Understanding equals why. Here's why that is so. Wisdom equals how. Wisdom knows how to apply knowledge to life situations. And what does it take to gain wisdom? Experience. Wisdom is acquired through experiences, but not just any experiences. Wisdom is acquired through evaluated life experiences. That's why I've always kept a journal. You know what goes in my journal? Life experiences. The things that I'm experiencing, the things that I have survived, and I always take the time to look for what was God trying to teach me in that. The more life experiences you evaluate, the more wisdom you acquire. Hence, wisdom belongs to the aged. In his New York Times bestseller, From Strength to Strength, Arthur Brooks writes about a type of intelligence he describes as crystallized intelligence. Crystallized intelligence is the ability to see things clearly because you are drawing from a warehouse of knowledge you've accumulated from your past. Therefore, crystallized knowledge tends to increase with age. Brooks writes, and I quote, "When you're young, you have raw smarts. When you're old, you have wisdom. When you're young, you can generate a lot of facts. When you're old, you know what they mean and how to use them." Fact 2, growing old produces wisdom. So if you're young, here's my advice to you. Listen. There's a shortcut to becoming wise. You can listen to an old person and let them share their wisdom with you. I'm going to let you young people, I'm going to let you know something. We old people, we know stuff. It's stuff you would benefit from knowing. And we would be happy to share it with you if you'd ask. But for some reason, oftentimes those who are young won't seek or listen to the advice of the aged. Can I give you a biblical example? Going to 1 Kings chapter 12, verse 1 through 20. Solomon, the third king of Israel, died, and his son Rehoboam took the throne. A delegation of Israelites shows up, had a meeting with him, and they had a request. Your daddy worked us like borrowed mules, and he taxed us unfairly. We're going to make 2 requests of you. Would you lighten our workload and would you reduce our taxes? Just make them fair. Rehoboam said, give me 3 days to think that over. First thing he did was he called in some men who are described in the Bible as older men. These were the men who had advised his father. He told them about the question. He said, what do you think I ought to do? And they said, this is what we'd recommend. Make this concession now. Do these things. And these people will be your loyal subjects as long as you're on that throne. There was something about that didn't sit right with Rehoboam. I think what it was, I think it went counter to his ego. He felt like it would come across as being weak. So he turned to a second group of men, and they're described in the Bible as younger men. These were the men who were poised to become his advisors. He told them what was going on. He said, what would you advise? And this is what they said: drop the hammer on them. Establish dominance right off the bat. Let them know that they're never to come to you with any questions again. You listen, that you're going to be so much worse than your father ever was. Something about that appealed, and I think it was, I'm going to come across as very powerful. So 3 days later, these folks showed back up and said, what's the word? And he told them, I'm going to demand more of you. The taxes are going to go up. No, sir. Guess what happened? Almost 85% of the people who were part of his kingdom defected. And they went and started another country. He split a nation. His kingdom was now 17% of what it was. I think Rehoboam had some good instincts. Seek the advice of the older men who served with Dad. And in hindsight, they gave him some wise counsel. But Rehoboam rejected their advice, choosing rather to listen to the young men. Why do you suppose he would do that? This is my opinion, just an opinion. I believe Rehoboam rejected the counsel of the old men because he saw them as yesterday. And he took the advice of the young men because he saw them as tomorrow. Rehoboam didn't believe these old guys could possibly help him navigate his future. He was wrong. I'm coming to believe that one of the most underused resources of our culture is the wisdom of the aged. It's there, it's available, and I'm telling you what is needed. But I fear it goes untapped because when a young person looks at an old person, they see yesterday rather than tomorrow. Ronnie, what do you mean by that? If you're a young person and you look at an old person, you should see tomorrow. Whose tomorrow? Yours. Every old person's yesterday is likely to be your tomorrow. What you're about to experience, they have experienced. The problem you're about to face, they've already solved. They have completed the path you're about to walk. Andy Stanley wrote a book entitled The Principle of the Path, How to Get From Where You Are to Where You Want to Be. He said it's simple. Find an older person who is where you want to be and ask them how they got there. If someone has already walked the path you're about to walk, wouldn't it make sense to ask them for some guidance? There were several consecutive summers where Bill Childs and I would fly out to Yellowstone and we would backpack in on Slough Creek for fly fishing. The Slough Creek Trail is relatively easy. There's a hill. You got to climb that hill with your backpack, and then it tops off. It's level. You're in a valley. You got the Rocky Mountains to the east, the Rocky Mountains to the west, and you walk up through that valley, and Slough Creek can be very crowded. We had to enter a lottery and be chosen for campsites. There was always a lot of traffic. So one summer, we're getting ready to go, and Bill calls me and said, I got an idea, man. I've been looking at a topo map. If we could cross those Rockies to the west of Slough Creek and descend those mountains, there's another creek there called Buffalo Creek. Looks like a big creek to me. He said, maybe this year we ought to try this. Let's make this circuit. Let's go across those mountains, drop in on Buffalo Creek, and fish our way down Buffalo Creek back into the park. Well, I thought, that is absolutely an outstanding idea. What an adventure. Well, we got our topo maps out, and we studied them. We plotted out, and we'll do 8 or 10 miles a day with a backpack. We'll set up camp. We'll fish till dark. We'll sleep. We'll get up in the morning, break camp, load the back. Man, it's going to be wonderful. I had this idea. maybe before we do that, we should try to find an outfitter somewhere in Montana who knows this country. So it took me some time, but I finally got one on the phone. And I said, hey, I'm from South Carolina. Me and my buddy, we come out to Slough Creek every year. We're thinking about going all the way out. We're going to take the Slough Creek Trail up to the Absaroka-Beartooth. We're thinking about catching this trail called the Tucker Creek Trail somewhere in Montana, and we're going to go through the Tucker Pass, cross the Rocky Mountains, descend into Buffalo Creek, and fish our way out. I said, what do you think about that? He said, I take 2 or 3 parties in there every year. It is remote. It is beautiful. It's relatively dangerous. It's extremely strenuous. He said, but I got a question. And he said, I'm not just necessarily trying to solicit your business, but have you already hired an outfitter? Do you already have your horses and your pack mules secured? I said, we're going to hike in. We're going to carry backpacks in. And then there's this long silence. I'm thinking. And then all of a sudden, there is this curse word. I mean, an expletive. Here it came. He said, you're going to do what? I said, we're just going to backpack in. We got some experience. He said, have you ever seen this country? Have you seen the country I'm talking about? Do you know what Tucker Creek Pass looks like? I said, well, no. He said, well, I do. He said, you would be fools if you strike out across that pass with a backpack on your back. Who the do you Flatlander, South Carolina boys think you are that you're going to backpack into Tucker Pass? He said, I need to go, oh, my beep. He said, do you own a topo map? I said, yes, sir. He said, look at Buffalo Creek. As it comes back into the park, you see those squiggly lines that get closer and closer together? I said, yes, sir. He said, that's a gorge. That's a gorge in the Rocky Mountains unlike anything you've seen back in South Carolina. He said, you get in that gorge, you're committed, son. You don't even know what it looks like down in there. I don't even know. He said, listen to me. You can't just fish a while and then say, I'm going to go back to the top of the mountain and make a sandwich and take a break. He said, you're in. He said, we got a word for guys like you. We call them casualties. Then he would cuss, and I finally just said, hey, look, man, I just appreciate your time, and thank you, sir. And I mean, as I'm hanging up, I still hear him cussing in the background. So I called Bill, and I said, hey, man, I talked to an outfitter. Bill said, what do you think? I said, he thought it was a bad idea. Bill said, did he seem fairly confident? I said, he seemed fairly confident. Now, Bill and I were standing, I was at his house the other day, we were laughing about this. Like, how catastrophic would it have been to strike out having not talked to anyone about this country? Listen to me. You folks would have probably never seen me again. You know, nobody. Bill and I lodged in that canyon, starving to death. I want you to understand something. Somebody's walked the path you're walking. Somebody's walked the path that you're going to walk. How wise it would be on your part to find them, to ask them, how did you navigate this? Okay, young people, you're off the hook. You're good. Yes, you need to do crossword puzzles, whatever you young people do, play video games. You're free. You're free on this. Fact number 3 is for my fellow seniors. Growing old isn't the end. Growing old and death are not synonymous. Yes, as we grow old, opportunities narrow. There are things our bodies just won't let us do anymore. But I don't think that means you just give up, sit in a rocking chair, and wait on death to overtake you. I'm saying old age is not an excuse to just do nothing. Old age is just another chapter. Why can't it be a rewarding chapter? Why couldn't old age be the most rewarding chapter of our life? Moses was 80 years old and semi-retired when God called him to take a leadership role. And I mean a humdinger of a leadership role. Moses left his life of ease and took the job. Was it easy? Nope. But it made the last chapter of his life the most rewarding chapter of his life. When the Israelites were conquering the Promised Land, a man named Caleb approached Israel leader Joshua and he made a crazy request. He wanted permission to fight the fiercest warriors and to settle in the most difficult terrain. You go, what was crazy about that request? Caleb was 80. He was 80 when he made that request. Caleb was 80 years old when he tackled the greatest challenge of his life. Was it easy? No, but it made the last chapter of his life the most rewarding chapter of his life. To my fellow seniors, yes, opportunities narrow, but in our not-so-golden years, God will still come calling. He will still open doors and create opportunities for those who have grown old. Fact number 3, growing old isn't the end. So if you're old, here's my advice to you. Live. Don't let the adventure die. It doesn't have to. Think of old Abraham. At the ripe old age of 75, God came and said, turn in your notice, list the house, pack your things, and follow me on a new adventure. You know what that old man did? He followed God even though he didn't have a clue where they were going. He struck out on nothing but faith, and his latter years proved to be his best years. I think it can be the same for you, and I think it can be the same for me. If God calls you to step up to a new challenge, be like Moses and Caleb, accept the challenge. If God calls you to step out in faith, be like Abraham and follow God into the exciting unknown, into a new adventure. Live. Back in the summer, Lynn and I were on vacation. And I began to experience something that I have felt at times as a follower of God. I don't know exactly how to explain it. A stirring, a pull, a call. And I told Lynn, I said, we need to be paying careful attention to God. Because I wouldn't be surprised if soon He doesn't call us to take a step of faith and launch into a new adventure. So we began praying for God's direction. Now, Clay, the way God has led my wife and I for the 45 years that we have followed Him together is one step at a time. He shows us a step, not necessarily anything connected to it, and says, take this step, and I'll show you the next step. So on a sultry August morning, as we were sitting on our porch, God confirmed His first step that He wanted us to take. Very clearly, He led us. I want both of you to retire. So Lynn informed her employer, and I contacted Tim and told him that I'd be retiring. This morning, I've come to inform you, my church family, that effective December 31st, 2023, I'll be retiring from my position here on the staff of Golden Corner Church. As I do, you need to know that serving as your pastor here was one of the greatest honors and pleasures of my life. Sometimes I think about other pastors and I have this wish for them. I wish that every pastor could serve a church like Golden Corner at least once in their ministry. And me, I've been privileged to serve you for 26 and a half years. How blessed I am. Now, I'm going to be around until then. Well, let me clarify. I won't be around much the next 3 weeks because Preacher Ron is going to be hunting. You got me? You with me? But I'll be back, and we can talk maybe a little bit. But I want you to know that I love this church. That's because I love you. You are this church. And I thank you. I hope that today and next week are the absolute best times of your life. I'm going to let you go. You're dismissed.